Welcome to the ThunderCast, your Marshall Athletics podcast produced by the fans, for the fans, with your hosts, Russ Livingood and KD Hugnall. We're bringing you the thundering word on the thundering herd each and every week. So keep it right here. The ThunderCast is on the loose. Thanks for downloading another episode of the ThunderCast. We're not even going to lie to you. We're banging two in one night because Russ is still outside, and we didn't do that on purpose. It's just how it has to be. There's some big news afoot, and I'm not really going to talk about it right now during position group breakdowns, but there's a method to our madness. Russ, the position group breakdown series is continuing tonight. We're talking about the running backs. And this is one of those that I think, well, just annually people are excited about, but particularly with the offense that we think we're going to see this year for the herd, running back is a big point of emphasis. I think it's got a lot of people jacked up and excited. I want to get into this one. But first, we might as well, for the second consecutive week, talk about why in the heck you're outside and who's responsible for this sweet look you got going on.
Well, so it's in the 90s outdoors, and my backup studio is on the third floor of my house where there's no air conditioning, and it's extremely hot up there. So I said, it's, even though it's hot, it's a great day, let's get out on the patio, set it up out here. The sound is fine, so nice little locale for me because I can't do it because there's someone in the Southside Suite where my studio is that I like to record from primarily. So speaking of that, this is available to the people that rent the Southside Suite. And we've had fans and player parents and a little bit of everybody come over here and stay. And they get to enjoy this yard and patio that is connected to my house as well, because the Southside Suite is almost connected to my house. Mm-hmm. And who did all this? You can't see the patio like you mentioned last week, but you can see the fencing behind us and a little bit of the landscaping and things like that. But our good friends, Landscaping by Hillcrest, which you can find at landscapingbyhillcrest.com, they do every tailgate of ours. They provide the food and the drink. And they said, we want to do it up big for your tailgates. That's the way they do their landscaping. And I promise, if you can see this patio and everything, the fence, they did an amazing job. But if you just go look at their gallery on their website, you'll see the kind of work that they do.
Yeah, big thanks to Tom and the folks at Landscaping by Hillcrest for partnering with us so that we can take care of herd fans and opposing fans that come to the tailgates of the ThunderCast. It's always free for everybody. We'd love for you to come hang out with us over on the C lot, right directly behind the video board. You can't miss us on a game day. We got a nice big spread out there. Of course, you might even catch the live tailgate show that's powered by ignite.link. I mean, we try to do what we can to make the experience fun for those first-timers to a herd game or for those old pros that never miss a game day. But, Russ, the position group breakdown series must continue. We're talking about running backs this week. I want to get into it, but I need you to first give me a word from our sponsors at Leasure Oliver PLLC.
If you've been hurt in a wreck, call the law firm of Leasure Oliver PLLC. Find them at 304carwreck.com.
All right, man, this one's going to be built on speed. We know it. This offense is going to be running the football. They're going to be running the football a whole hell of a lot. The coaching show should have include everybody into that because, of course, you've got offensive coordinator Rod Smith comes over from Jacksonville State. You've got running backs coach Rod McDowell that also comes over from Jacksonville State. Between the two of them, they were responsible for a metric buttload of rush yards on their team's offenses over the past couple of years. So I'm excited to get into this one. So let's get it going, shall we? Let's talk about returning players, first of all, for the 2025 Marshall Thundering Herd, guys that were on the 2024 roster and made their way over to the 2025 roster. You start with Antoine Roberts, 6'1", 202-pound red shirt junior, and then Stanley Jackson, a 6', 213-pound this year red shirt sophomore. It's really the only two guys that I could find that held over from a year ago and remained in the room. So again, as with last week, very minimal amount of continuity within the room, but we'll get into that later. Now you talk about some guys that exhausted eligibility, and this is where two of your three biggest losses kind of hit you. Start with Ethan Payne, a fan favorite for a myriad of reasons. Jordan Houston, who came over from NC State 2 years ago and made a name for himself, and then Sadiq Jackson. Before we get into the portal, let's talk about what we lost in Payne and Houston from the offense a year ago, shall we?
Mm-hmm.
Jordan Houston turned in to be a real bright spot for Herd fans, even as A.J. Turner was having a great year, before he got dinged up a little bit and kind of got derailed somewhat. He was on his way to having a phenomenal year. But when that happened, Jordan Houston took a bigger role in the offense, and it seemed like things, the explosiveness in the run game might not have been there as much as when A.J. Turner was in the backfield. But what you did trade off was more versatility. It felt like the short run game was definitely felt stronger, but the receiving game out of the backfield became a real weapon, because anytime Jordan Houston or Ethan Payne was on the field, you knew that there was a capable receiver coming out of the backfield. And then leads you into Ethan Payne, who was there always to get you that hard yard, but would also be able to run through some defenders and pick up that first down on a 1st and 10 to move the chains on one single play. But I think it was the blocking between those two guys that you're going to look at primarily and go, man, are we going to miss that? Is that going to be as much of a point of emphasis this year as it was last year? Are we going to need our running backs to do it as much as they did it, as well as they did it? Those are the questions that I can't answer for you right now. What is it that comes to mind to you when you start thinking about Ethan Payne exhausting eligibility, Jordan Houston also exhausting eligibility, and not being in this backfield this year?
The leadership from Payne, and as a local player and everything, I think that goes without saying. He was also that guy that short yardage, you just felt like he was going to get it. Jordan Houston, even though we're talking about from a running back standpoint, he was big on special teams as a returner for us as well. But you remember that 75-yard Braylon Braxton, I believe it's his first game that he started against App State, and he threw that 75-yard swing pass, and it was like 1 yard, 2 yard pass, and he takes it to the house. Yeah. Jordan Houston had that explosive ability. He felt like he was one of those rock solid, like a bowling ball type guy that you're not just going to put a pad on and he's going to go down. He was out there hitting some people, getting that extra yard. And again, leadership from him. Both of those guys were seniors, and leadership in the locker room and everything, and on the field as well. We're going to miss that.
Yeah, we are going to miss that. And we're going to talk about some guys that hit the portal and came and that will be on the roster this year that can fully capable of replacing what those guys meant to an offense. But they'll probably play bigger roles in this particular offense than what we saw our running backs last year. But, Jordan Houston is another one of those guys. I mentioned this last week when we were talking about linebackers and missing a guy like J.C. Anderson. Like, man, if you just had one more year in this transition of a new coaching staff and, defending this conference championship and all that stuff, if either Houston or Payne would have had one more year, it would have been like, man, these are guys that could really be assets, and a lot of questions now because we don't have that continuity arise. The portal was not kind necessarily to the Herd, but I think that's well documented that running back position isn't the anomaly in the portal out section for the Herd. But let's talk about him. Who left? Of course, A.J. Turner hits the portal. Moses Gray, portal's out. Stanley, here's Stanley Jackson again.
It's Sadiq Jackson. I don't know. He left. Stanley Jackson is returning and is on the roster, I think.
Okay.
I
He's
think.
on the roster for sure.
Yeah.
Carter Holsworth, and then Randy Young and CJ Fazio. So not a lot of production portals out per man, but a lot of production portals out from the top heavy AJ Turner hitting the portal and leaving. Then we're going to talk about a handful of guys that are coming in from the portal, and man, there's potential is off the charts here, man. But there's a running theme that's going on, and I think that theme is kind of along the way of a bounce back season. We're going to have to see some guys have a bounce back season.
I just verified Stanley Jackson did end up entering, and it was late in April.
Okay, so there you go. Now we're down to one guy, Antoine Roberts, continuing to remain on the roster from a year ago. So let's talk about the guys that portaled in right out of the gate. Pretty much as soon as Tony Gibson was hired, you see the announcement of Michael Allen, a 5'11", 210-pound running back from UNLV, but spent a lot of time at NC State. And I think that's why you see that happen really quickly, the announcement to come to the herd of some familiarity amongst coaches. 19 carries for 108 yards in just 3 games in 2024, but he voluntarily said, I'm done. I'm going and taking my red shirt and I'm going to go into the portal. So it wasn't from a health standpoint. It wasn't for anything dismissed from the team or anything like that. This is a scenario where these things happen now, and he voluntarily ended his season early just to enter the transfer portal, and the herd's going to benefit from that. Joshawn Barbie comes not long after that, 5'9", 181-pounder from McNeese State, 831 yards last year on 149 carries, 8 total touchdowns on the ground, then another 8 through the air. You got to like how that sounds. Then Tony Matthysse Jr. joins the herd, 5'11", 205 out of Houston, but also another one of those guys that made more of his production at another school. He was once at West Virginia. So he was injured in 2024. He had the most of his production in the year 2022, where he rushed for 562 yards for the Mountaineers. Then you get Justin Williams Thomas, a 6', 215-pound running back from Cal, but was a highly recruited freshman that committed to Tennessee before going to Cal. He's just been hampered by injuries over his career. Just 91 yards on 21 carries in 2023 is all I could really find on Justin Williams Thomas. Then you get the wild card, which I think a lot of folks are going to like, at least from the surface. You get Judah Price, 5'7", 180-pound redshirt sophomore from West Virginia. He was a scout teamer in 23, didn't see any action in 24. But again, if you go back to that high school senior season, he's the 2022-23 West Virginia Gatorade Player of the Year. Obviously a first-team All-State player, 2,587 rushing yards on 49 touchdowns as a senior at Independence High School. So holy crap, those kind of like blow you away. But yes, we're talking about high school numbers. Let's talk about the guys that you get coming into the portal. And I want to say this, I don't necessarily know that we are, it feels like we might be done, but you never can stamp it, right? Because we know what this offense means for the running back. It's got to be attractive to people, and there are still going to be moves that are get made. But what do you like, and are your thoughts about the crop of portal guys?
Well, I think it was great to see that number of people coming in. I don't want to give away a lot of my key talking points for later, but I think, by necessity, you had to bring in that amount, but which it'll probably lead into our next little thing. I think that bringing in this many that you could say who's going to be the starter, who's going to get the bulk of the carries, when you look at the type of production that was brought in and potential that was brought in, I think that is what makes it so promising for me.
Yeah, and I'm with you there too. I don't think you're looking at a workhorse back type scenario. I think you're looking at a far more by committee friendly system. This system, we keep saying, is predicated on speed. And I think what you have here is a lot of guys that can you can substitute one for the other, and you're not going to see a big drop off in the speed capacity. Of course, speed doesn't always equal production. We know that. One final name I got to mention that's also on the roster currently on Herd Zone is Anthony Quinn Jr., a 6 foot, 200 pounder, true freshman. So let's move into projected starters. And I don't think it's fair that we only nail one name or maybe even two names. So I've jotted down 3 names that I think you're just going to see in a massively heavy rotation. It could be more than that, obviously.
Right.
But I'm going to talk about 3 of them. So how do you want to tackle this?
Well, first, let me read what I wrote for this expected starters notes. And it said, does it matter?
No.
I see a rotation of the hot hand, but the starter might not mean more carries than the rest any particular game.
Yeah.
So, let's go with some names. I'll give one. You give one, maybe?
Okay.
Number 1 for me, Joan Barbie. I think how he performed and got a lot of carries in the spring game. I think that it is highly intriguing in this offense how he is a weapon through the air. And I think the speed, shiftiness, all that sort of thing is going to play very well in this offense.
Yeah, not surprising. Joan Barbie makes his way onto my list of the top 3 as well. 5'9", 181 pounder, maybe a little bit shorter in stature than you would like to see, but we're not talking about a featured back, got to put up with a lot of abuse game in and game out, 30 carries a game type guy. And I don't think any of these guys are going to be that type of guy. I think you're far more likely to see 3 running backs get 10 to 12 carries a game than you are to see 1 running back get 30. Yeah. It just feels like that's what it's going to be. But for all the reasons you said, and plus Barbie really has some production that you can point to and go, hey, this was almost a 1,000-yard rusher right here. This is a guy that we know can tote the rock. And we saw flashes of that, obviously, in the spring game. And and just something that's totally unrelated yet related. We, from the Herd, have had a really good string of players from Matthysse that have came in and played at a high level for us. And I know not any one guy means anything to the success of another guy. But I just think that's a weird focal point that just keeps happening for us over the last 3 to 5 years, Yeah. So you can't just turn your back to it. Who else you got?
I've also got Justin Williams-Thomas. I feel like that he will finally have that year to where, especially if he's only going to be doing 10 to 15 rushes, that it won't be that featured back workload that he would have to worry about as someone coming off of a knee injury or whatever. I think that he will be heavily in that rotation.
Definitely probably could be, right? But I'm going to go one notch above that right here because Williams-Thomas has still got some years ahead of him, whereas Matthysse does not. It's a one and done year for him. I think we say this all the time. You don't transfer somewhere and not expect to play if you've got 1 year to go. So the familiarity with the state, obviously, he's a WVU guy. He's obviously got some familiarity with some of these coaches. I feel like he's going to be in that really quick top 3 rotation of running backs, and 5'11", 205, and it's a prove-it year, not just for him or not for anybody else, because this is the last year. So this is the year you have to make it happen for yourself. And if you can put 562 up on the season in Morgantown, you've been dinged up for a couple of years. Now's your time. You got to get it done. 2025 is your year to shine. So obviously, I think you really want to obviously set a personal goal to try to eclipse what your current season high is. That's why I have him in my top 3. Who do you have? Who else you have?
I also have Matthysse up there, and it's for a lot of what you just said. There's proven ability. One of those games, I think he put up 177 yards or something like that, a couple of touchdowns. So when given that opportunity, he has shown that he can do it. And he's had some injury-hampered seasons as well. But I think that this will be a year with a shared duty that, that lighter workload would allow him to go harder, and that's one of the things that I think is a little undersold when you're looking at this. Not that anybody's taking plays off, but if you know you're not getting the ball 25 to 30 times, you can rush just as hard as you want, all 10 of your carries that you're going to get or whatever. And the offense that they have here and what you've seen at Jacksonville State, which we'll get into much later in this show, I think you're going to see that rotation and you're going to see these guys have that opportunity for success like that. I think Matthysse is going to excel as one of these heavy in the rotation starters. I don't know how else to describe them.
Yeah, I don't know what term we're going to come up with to use that. Anyway, my last in the top three is Michael Allen, right? The UNLV transfer that pulled himself out of the season, saving all of the abuse and the rigors of a full football season. And it's because he spent a lot of time at NC State where, I feel like it's like, okay, let me reunite with some coaches that I know and another guy that's got to prove it. Like it's a bold move pulling yourself out of a season. Like that's going to put that could not have gone over well with the folks in Las Vegas when you do that, right? So they're obviously feeling some type of way, and not that it matters to him or them what goes on, but it's just like that's a bold move to do that to yourself because you're betting on something. At some point you're betting on something of why you would do that, and this has to be that something, right? Because this is the next stop.
And it was multiple players on that same team that did that. And if I'm not mistaken, one of them is the quarterback going to James Madison that we're going to be seeing this year and talking about. So, yeah, just an interesting situation.
Yeah, that the QB, I believe that was Matt Sluka, I believe is his name.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that one got ugly, man. That was over like an NIL dispute and.
Well, somebody said it was, then somebody said it wasn't, and other things. All of them, including Michael Allen, just said this was not what was promised to me up front.
Yeah. So yeah. It seemed like it was I don't want to call it a toxic situation, but it just didn't seem like that situation was coming from a place of truth. At least truthful enough to where these guys felt comfortable continuing to be there. So why waste a year of eligibility if you don't, if what you were told is not what was happening?
Right.
So we might be able to, be the beneficiaries of another year with, no nagging injury, no big hits, no abuse on the body, man. I'll take it.
I also have Allen there because I had 4 that I thought would be heavy rotation to get carries. And again, when we get into some of our talking points on strengths, weaknesses, points to ponder, things like that, I'll back that up a little bit on what I was talking about.
Yeah, I figure if I would have written 4 down, my 4th probably would have been Williams Thomas, but I just decided to stop at 3. So let's transition over. Let's talk about some strengths of this running back unit. And what is your number 1 overall?
It's depth and experience. All the transfers in have several years in programs. I'm not talking about production, but they've been here in programs, some of those top schools. You don't have to worry about that nutrition and getting acclimated to the weight room and the rigors of a season. So they are experienced in that way, whether they had 800 carries on the year or not, So the depth of that is you're not talking about it was one guy that came in like that or 2 guys that came in like that. We just talked about 4 that have at least 2, but most have 3 seasons at another school. And I think that has to play a little bit to have that many people with that much experience.
No, it absolutely does. And for that reason, it's my number 2 overall strength. The running back room is deep, man. There's no way to say it. Like if this offense plays the way we think it's supposed to or gonna play, I won't say supposed to because it's not my offense to run. But if it plays the way we think it's going to play, it's going to require a lot of running back talent. So you, by very definition, you're going to have a deep running back room in order to make that happen. And they went and made it happen, man. We saw some guys that I know that there were guys that were highly rated in the portal. Like this is the number 3 portal back, and he's going to Marshall. And you're going, and when you talk about guys like Tony Matthysse, like might not have been rated super high, but it's because he was injured, or Michael Allen, he was rated really high, and that was a tumultuous situation in Las Vegas. So this is a deep, deep, deep room. And the more we talk about not having to have a guy that has to have 20, 25 carries a game, right? We might have that on a game per game basis. If somebody's freaking hot, man, and they just cannot seem to be tackled, why are you going to take the ball out of their hands, right? But I just feel like most of the time it's going to be by committee, always a fresh set of legs in there that's a pretty damn close to 100%, that type of thing, to where a defense is really going to be exploited. You have to have a deep running back room. What's your number 2?
It's the scheme of Rod Smith as the offensive coordinator, and Rod McDowell, the running backs coach. And I think that you're going to see a lot of what you saw at Jacksonville State. You're going to see a lot of runs, but you're going to see some of those coming from the receiving core. You're going to see some of those coming from the quarterback, maybe a heavy dose coming from the quarterback. So you're not going to see defenses just be able to key in on a running back, because they don't know, hey, even if this is a running play, who's going to have the ball. Mm-hmm. So I think that you're going to see a lot of reverses, jet sweeps, other types of sweeps, maybe some speed option. So I think that the scheme itself is going to lend itself toward success on the ground. And when you look at 5.4 yards per carry as a team at Jacksonville State, and some of the guys getting 8 yards per carry individually and things like that, people have excelled in these offenses under Coach Rod Smith.
Well, and Coach Rod McDowell. Remember, we talked about this.
We did.
He was at ULM before he went to Jack State, and increased their run offense production by 80 yards a game in one season. Yeah. Right. And or maybe it was 50 yards a game. Maybe they were averaging 80. And
it doesn't matter.
Whatever. It doubled, right? But then once you get to Jack State, this offense produced the number 3 team rushing offense for 2 straight years. Yeah. You're going to run the damn football in this offense.
Over 3,000 yards both years. I've got the stats for some of that, and it's mind-blowing.
It is absolutely mind-boggling, and I mentioned this before. Herd fans love to see the football chucked down the field. There's a lot of fans that continually sit in the stands that sit there and remember Pennington to Moss and Byron to Watts and Byron to Josh Davis and Marriott and Williams and all these guys, right? Like Pennington to whatever. But if they are running the football effectively, there are a lot of guys and gals that'll sit there in the stands and go, they can't stop us. This is freaking awesome. Like they're happy to watch whatever puts points on the board. And this offense, not surprising, is my number 4 overall strength. This is a run-friendly offense, and you've got uber impactful coaches leading the charge and developing these guys. But also, it's the guys that are taking the snaps. It's the quarterbacks that make this room an overall strength, because is the Carlos Del Rio Wilson going to tuck it and take off, taking the pressure off of this running back? Because now you have to respect what Del Rio Wilson can do. Is it Zion Turner that's doing the same damn thing? Is it Jaquai Long that's going to do the same damn thing? You're going to have to pay more respect to these running backs coming out of the backfield for the herd, whether in the receiving game, the running game, or whatever, because you have a room full of mobile dual threat quarterbacks that we're not even talking about right now. That is a huge strength for this overall room. What's your number 3?
It's the diversity of styles. You've got a smaller, shiftier Barbie at 5'9" that, as you mentioned, did a lot of damage through the air as well. Up to a 215-pound Williams Thomas, and then Michael Allen's also 215 pounds. So you've got some power, some speed, receiving out of the backfield. You got a little bit of everything amongst these 4 that we've talked about, plus the other guys that are going to be making up the rest of the carries coming out of the backfield. I mean, we've got a very diverse set of backs here.
Yeah, there's a lot of flavor. And in this room, you can do what you need to do. You got plenty of shiftiness. You've got plenty of power that will serve your purposes, right? My number 3, I'm going to save my number 1 for last since we're all the way into this. My number 3 overall strength is the potential of this room is off the charts. I mean, it's off the charts. And I mentioned this before earlier, talking about some particular guys. It's a prove-it season for some of these guys, right? Tony Matthysse Jr. probably wants to prove it to himself that he's still got a great year in him and wants to make a run. They want to look at the NFL, right? And this is his last year. He's going to want to do all he can do to try to get that look, try to get that opportunity. You've got Williams Thomas that's just been banged up for a couple of years and hasn't really been able to showcase truly what he can do. So it's a prove-it season for him in that capacity. But the potential overall is just off the charts when you talk about the offense that you mentioned has had over 3,000 yards rushing the past 2 seasons, and now you bring that playbook here, and then you go get you some portal guys that fit the mold of what they want to do. I mean, it's not like they're going out and going, man, we need some backs. Who can we get? We'll take anybody. Yeah. You know, they're being highly selective and are looking for a skill set. They're looking for a body type. They're looking for all these particulars. And on the flip side of that, running backs are probably going, man, I love this offense. I can be showcased in this offense. And that's what it's all about for those guys. You know, it's all about showing everything that you can do while helping a team win.
And what about being showcased in this offense, but yet saving yourself by not having to go through 30 carries a game to do so you can turn the same heads with these huge runs and everything with fresh legs, but then you're not taking that beating. So when it comes time that if you're fortunate enough to go professional, that you will still have some body left in you. Look how the running backs now that have taken so much of a beating, by the time they get to the pros, you know, and they've only got 3-4 years left. And the NFL has switched from that same thing to where you don't have that feature back anymore that's getting that many carries, that they have that so they can get a little bit more out of their guys. I think that's huge for a lot of people at the college level to know that they could go to a place and still save a little bit of themselves, but still put up crazy numbers in this scheme.
Well, and it doesn't even have to be crazy, right? You can just you can build a highlight reel without having a gaudy overall stat line at the end of the season. But how weird is it to say, like in the NFL game, you're 26 years old, you're considered old. Yeah. You know, it's a very short shelf life for most running backs in the NFL. It's exceedingly rare to see a guy stick around for year after year. Like the Saquon Barkleys just don't grow on trees. You know, this guy's great and been great and is still great. And, you know, but when you hit your mid-20s, they're already starting to say, he's a little long in the tooth. And that's hilarious to me. My number 1 overall strength, right? I've said it over and over and over. This offense is built on speed, and this room has speed to burn. And that's what you have to make it all work the way it's supposed to work. And we love that. More than anything else, I love speed out of the backfield. That is the great equalizer. If you can't be fast enough to hit the hole, how big the hole is doesn't matter. It's going to close before you get there. If you can't get to the edge before the linebacker gets there, then it doesn't matter. You're not going anywhere, right? And we've got tons of speed. And with your creativity that we expect to see in this offense, the playbook that we expect to be run on Saturdays this entire season, speed is going to be the choice factor amongst running backs in this room. And, man, we got a lot of it.
I had a 4th as well. We kind of hit on it in almost all these, but it's just the fresh legs in this that you're going to be able to continue to bring in and bring out and things like that. And I mean, we've said it enough, but I legitimately had 25 plus carries here. It's just, you're not going to see that. Even if you see it occasionally in a game, on average, you're not going to see 25 carries on average by any one of these guys.
Yeah. And I mean, unless they have captured lightning in a bottle and they are just untouchable. Yeah. Why would you? You know, why risk injury? Why do that? Keep everybody relatively healthy. Keep everybody fresh. The defenses are the ones that are going to continually being tired, and you're always going to be facing fresh legs out of a herd backfield. Daunting task even before you take the first snap. Now, I would love to sit here and say that everything is perfect and it's all going to be positive and it's flawless and all the things. But the fact of the matter is there are going to be some weaknesses in this room and there are going to be some weaknesses in this unit. So we need to talk about those. And let's be as fair as we can, obviously. But what is your – I've got 3. I don't know how many you have. But
I've got 2.
Okay, let's go with what's your number 1 overall.
It's all new. Every single yard, every single carry from 2024 is gone. You have that tall task of replacing it all, and it was promising what we had last year. There was a lot of production that came from the ground game, and you think that AJ Turner, had he been healthy all year, with the explosive runs that he had of 80, of 67, of 66, and all that different stuff, and then Jordan Houston with runs of 75 or a reception of 75 or whatever, that's a lot of production that they're going to have to replace. So it's a tall task that they're going to have to do that.
Yeah.
Do I think that they can? Yes, because of the scheme. But as of right now, none of them have had a rush yard or an attempt at Marshall University.
Yeah. The thing I point to, my number 1 weakness is the same thing that I had when we kind of talked about the linebackers. Is like we don't have that guy that I can point to and I go, I know what I got in him, right? There are 0 1,000-yard rushers on this roster. The best season out of all of them is Joshawn Barbie's 831-yard, 8-touchdown season. Wow, that's really great, and that's really close to what A.J. Turner ended up with last year. We know that Turner got dinged up, and he was well on his way to a 1,000-yard season. I feel like that was inevitable had he stayed healthy. But still, we don't have anybody, because it's such a massive turnover in the room. We don't have anybody that we can point to and go, we know as Herd fans what we have in that guy. And as hype as I am about what the offense could be and what I think it will be by and large, I still don't know what I have in any of these guys. A spring game isn't going to tell me everything I need to know.
Yeah.
I mean, especially half of one, because I didn't get to stick around hardly at all and I had to leave. But even if you stayed for the whole thing, it's not going to tell you everything you need to know. So that to me is a huge weakness. What's your number 2?
To me, it's the unknown. Now, they can get on the field and prove it, but right now, we don't know if we have the guys that are going to pick up those blocks. We don't know if we have the guys that you can count on to pick up that first down on 3rd and short or 4th and 1. We don't know if we have that guy that has that cutback vision. He sees it, stops on a dime, and then just explodes out of there. Have to see what we have once the game started, but right now we don't know if we have that.
Yeah. I think the only thing that I'm confident that we have are downhill runners,
because
that's like running back 101, get ball, run with ball, right? It's all the intangibles and the vision and the moves that guys either kind of have or they don't have. So that's a very good point. The only thing that we can rely on is that a guy knows which direction to run once he gets the football. Number 2 for me is that we are relying on the return from injury from 2 of the big pieces that we think are supposed to play a vital part. And that's always a big question mark. You can think you're healthy and you can think you're a go and kind of turns out that you might not be where you thought you were. And, Tony Matthysse and Williams Thomas, those 2 guys that are returning from injury to expect to have big years. I know they want to have big years. They're probably working their asses off to have a big year, but you're still returning from injury. And there's something that comes along with that you have to, kind of be aware of. And it's a valid weakness until it's proven not to be. And I've got one more, and I think it's something that we can't just not talk about. I feel like the pass catching in this room has notched down a lot from 22, 23, and 24 because Barbie might be good out of the backfield. We don't really know about everybody else, but we know Rasheen Ali was great out of the backfield. We know Jordan Houston was great out of the backfield, and we know Ethan Payne was pretty damn good out of the backfield. So for 3 straight years at least, we knew we had more than one guy that was a absolute weapon out of the backfield, not just running the football. I mean, think about that big long pass play that Rasheen Ali had at Georgia State a few years ago that really injected life into the herd. We saw Ethan Payne make clutch catch after clutch catch. They didn't have to go for touchdown. You know, it's just clutch catch to move the chains to get something going.
Highlight reel catch.
And we mentioned Jordan Houston and what he was able to do with a 1 to 2 yard pass to take it to the house. So that is a big part of the game that I don't know if it's a huge part of this offense's game, but overall, I know we had 3 great pass catching running backs that at any given time, 2 of them were on the roster together at least. So that I feel like it has to have notched down. I mean, those guys were great pass catchers out of the backfield.
Great point.
Yeah. Let's move into the questions, man. Who's the biggest loss, as if I had to guess, from a year ago?
Well, it's obviously A.J. Turner, and, he had time left as well. The potential that he showed that he had here, he could have really put in a special season, and I would love to have seen what he would have done in this scheme.
Mm-hmm.
So it's him. I just do want to give that shout out, though, like we have already done, to Jordan Houston for what a great year that he had last year. As going into it, you kind of felt like, well, maybe he'll spell them a little bit, be a third down back every now and then, to where he really, really came up clutch for us, especially down the stretch.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest loss, obviously, to me also is A.J. Turner. He was on his way to cruising past 1,000-yard season had he not got dinged up. Still ended up with 800 and some yards. I don't really know right off the top of my head. But you have to say, man, it's almost a 1A, B, and C, because Houston was, I think, the best all-around weapon that we had out of the backfield last year. But you just can't discount what Ethan Payne meant to this team with toughness and leadership and the pass catchability and the short yardage plays and the blocking. And, I mean, he just did everything. He didn't have to do one thing phenomenally well. He just did everything really, really good. So for everybody that's going to just hang their hat on the yardage that we lose, man, you just can't discount what the other guys did. This so far in this series is the closest of biggest losses that I could come up with. It was hard to just say, oh, it's A.J. Turner bona fide and that's it. I mean, it was because of the production. The other 2 guys were just really big losses as well. Yeah. Who are you most excited to see in 2025?
For me, it's Williams Thomas. I think that potential of that big-time recruit, highly rated player, offered by nearly everybody. I don't know if you've seen that offer list, but I mean, it's basically a who's who, and a lot of the perennial top 10 teams had him offered. Everybody wanted this guy. So obviously at some point, this guy has had the potential to be one of the feature backs in all of college football. So that intrigues me. Mm-hmm. I know that he's had some injuries and things like that. And I am not trying to say, hey, we're going to get what we had with Labrin coming from Florida State. But it's kind of similar. You've got a recruited by a bunch of people, a highly rated prospect, and then he doesn't have many carries and everything, and then he goes to Marshall to prove himself. Mm-hmm. That to me is intriguing, so I'm excited to see that. Mm-hmm. I'm excited to see a little bit of everybody. I love Joan Barbie's game, but most of all, I'm excited to see that redemption story from Williams Thomas, to see if he can come here and live up to that potential.
Yeah. Excellent pick, right? And I love the reasoning. I love how you derive at the pick. For me, I'm most excited to see Joan Barbie. And for what you just said, I love the game. But also, I'm a big underdog type guy, and I love a guy that's said, hey, man, I went and I put up numbers here. I put up numbers here. I was able to do this, this, and this. Now I want to come here and show you that I can do it here too. And let's be honest, he's the guy that's put up the most yardage in a season so I'm really excited to see if that translates to what we want to do here in this offense that should be far more running back friendly.
Yeah.
So give me Joe Barbie as the most excited prospect that I'm ready to see for the herd this year. Who's your breakout?
Everything that you just said about Barbie there is my breakout here. He hasn't gotten the press that these other running backs have gotten. Like even Williams Thomas has gotten so much press because he's a highly rated guy and he's been at Tennessee and he's been at Cal. And the press is like, well, if he hadn't had that knee injury, what would he be doing right now? But here's Barbie putting up numbers and showing how diverse that he is and explosive that he is, and he's not getting the press. And it's because he's at Matthysse.
Mm-hmm.
He's in the Southland Conference. So I think that he is going to come here. He's going to turn some heads and he's going to make a name for himself. And I think he's going to be the breakout.
Man, this is so fun to do, to figure out how we get to these picks. I'm picking a guy that is pseudo broken out, but it's a prove it. Give me Tony Matthysse, man. I think 1 year to go. I got to make it happen. Like, rushed for some yardage for the Mountaineers several years ago now, and you got one more time to make it count. And I think, like, above all the other dudes, it's like he's got the most at stake in this particular season if he wants to play beyond 2025. So I just feel like that, like, it's fueling this inner fire to be like, this has got to be my year. Like, there's no excuses. I can't wait. There's no more wait and see. I got to do it right now. And I feel like Tony Matthysse is my breakout player, man. It just feels right to me. I don't know. I don't know that I can accurately pick an MVP. Do you want to try for one?
I do. And here's what I wrote down in anticipation. You know, we have these same questions for each breakdown, and I knew what was coming. So I put it was the hardest question of the offseason to say who is the MVP. And I don't mean just MVP question for every position group. I mean all the questions that you ask. I feel this is the hardest one because I feel like they're all going to be sharing the responsibilities so much. Is it a cop-out to say whoever gets the most carries and attempts?
I don't know.
But gun to my head, put me on the spot. I have to come up with somebody. I went out on the limb of all limbs, and I picked Williams Thomas because I feel like he is not going to get the most carries in game one or going into the season. But I feel like if he does have that, just a couple of explosive runs, and he does what A.J. Turner, Turner came in and he didn't start that first game and he hits an 80-yard touchdown. And if you put him in there and he does some of this stuff and they're like, whoa, this guy finally did, and you're looking at the same thing as Laburn, who was going to come here and just spell Rasheen Ali, and then there was an injury, and just all this stuff works out. If that happens, I think that you have potential here to have one of the best running backs in the country living up to that level that he was expected to be. Give me him for the MVP in the darkest of dark horses that I could come up with.
Man, that is so. It's not only like that. It's a possibility. You can't look at that reasoning and go, dude, you're out of your mind, right? But you can look at that and go, you are on a thin twig out there because there's literally no data to go off of except for an offer list and other people saying, but if.
Yeah.
So that's big. That's a big, and this has been the hardest question. This might be the hardest question, like you said, of all position groups, is who's the running back MVP. That's tough. I couldn't even. I wrote one letter down, and I was like, I don't know if I can do it. And then I got busy and didn't even revisit one. But as we've been talking, I feel like it might be Barbie. I feel like it might be Joan Barbie. From all, because he's surrounded by these guys that have, had these crazy offers, gone all these different places, and just haven't been able to make it all work. And meanwhile, he's like, I'm making it work, you know? So He's my guy. Let me just. I'll just. Why not? He's my guy.
There
Now,
is nothing you could have said there that I could have argued against with any one of these guys, right? So I have to agree with you on that.
I love doing these, man. This is so fun. Who's the sleeper pick for you, though?
It's probably Michael Allen. I feel like he does have 2 years. He's not like Matthysse is one and done, and these other guys have some years that they can do it. But Michael Allen, with the way that it went down last year, of after 3 games, and having some production, but saying, "Look, this wasn't what I signed up for." I feel like he has something to prove, and I feel like he's got to prove it because he's got 2 years left. If he goes here and goes, this wasn't what I was signing up for either, what's everybody going to say?
Yeah.
This guy just can't cut it, and he can't stand. He's a diva. He can't be number one. I'm not saying any of that's true. I'm saying that's the narrative that somebody's going to pick up on, and he can't have that. So he's going to have to come here. He was productive at NC State. He was productive at UNLV. He's shown that he has the chops. I think that he's never been in an offense like this, so that could help even more elevate anyone's game. But to me, that just reeks of sleeper to me, that all the intangibles are there for him to do it if he gets enough carries.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of tack on to that. It's almost like, see what you guys could have had if you just would have been truthful with everybody. Like, look, you let this slip through your fingers, and now James Madison's going to benefit from a really, really good quarterback. I mean, he's reuniting with his former head coach. He was at Holy Cross with their head coach. So, but it feels like he comes out here and dominates or has a really good season. He could go, see, like, this is what you're missing out on if you just would have been truthful with everybody. But my sleeper goes right back to what you were saying not 5 minutes ago. You picked an MVP on the weakest of limbs, and that's my sleeper pick. It's Justin Williams-Thomas, and everybody in the world wanting this dude coming out of high school. Hasn't been able to stay healthy enough to get it going for a season. But, man, if it stays healthy and he gets it going, he's going to be real hard to keep off of the field, even in an offense like this. Like, if he's electric, that's the great, equalizer, the speed for the room. But if he's hot, that kind of the game plan kind of goes out the window. You feed the hot hand, you feed the legs, and if it's finding the end zone, you really don't take it off the field. So that adds up to me for sleeper. Are we better in 2025 than we were in 2024?
Yes, highly, due to the scheme and the depth that we have. And, just you look at the production, which leads me into this. Do you want me to do this now, or do you want to answer if you're better and then talk about these stats?
You're on.
All right, so Jacksonville State 2024, they had 646 rushes for 3,517 yards, 5.4 yards per carry for the entire team, 51 touchdowns on the ground, 3,500 yards and 50 touchdowns. And that was 2024 last year. Now, the per game average was 46 rushes, 251 yards on the ground, and 3.6 touchdowns. Round that up to 4 a game, And now the QBs and receiving core, mainly the QB, accounted for 1,593 of those yards, 19 of those touchdowns. But you're still looking at over 2,000 yards by the entire running back unit, or right at is like 1,900 something, and 32 touchdowns from the running back room. We didn't have that last year. We didn't have that. We're going to go see with this scheme, we're going to see people just putting up massive amounts of yards if it works the way that's done everywhere else that it's been. It's worked.
Yeah,
this hasn't been a, hey, this works once you get your players in it 4 years into the scheme. They show up at Jack State and it starts happening year one.
Yeah. it seems to work everywhere, and I was, while you were talking, one of the things that popped into my head that was curious about was they were putting up all these crazy numbers, but and running all the time. What was the time of possession? How much clock did they control? And I was expecting to see something much higher as an average across the entire season last year, 26 minutes and 57 seconds.
Yeah.
So you want to talk about explosive. Dude, that says explosive to me.
Yeah.
You're not even possessing the football for half of the game, but you're number 3 in the country in rushing last year. All those numbers, 33,000 yards and 50 touchdowns.
So
Whew.
now let's take it. Earlier, I said I had 4 running backs, and instead of just the 3 that I had listed, and you said, Williams Thomas would have been your 4th there. So let's talk about 2023 and how it was different than 2024 for them. Still explosive, but 2023 at Jack State, I feel like, is a better indicator of what we may see this year with our sharing of the football. 5 players, 2 of them were quarterbacks, but 5 players had at least 85 attempts. I think that you're going to see a lot of that. Now, I don't think that we're going to have 2 quarterbacks here in a kind of like a quarterback battle. We'll see, obviously a backup quarterback in at some point. But I feel like we're going to be running the ball instead of with that second quarterback getting at least 85 rushing attempts. That's a lot for a backup quarterback.
Yeah.
Unless there is an injury, that puts them in this situation. I don't see the backup quarterback getting at least 85 carries, if you get what I'm saying. So I think that you're still going to see that workload with a quarterback and 4 running backs getting a lot of work. Now, in 2024, that changed a little bit. I don't know the history. Maybe it was because of injuries. Maybe it was because of whatever. But that's a lot for your 5th overall attempt guy to get 85.
Well, yeah, because you're still looking at somewhere around
7 a
to
game.
8 carries a
Yeah.
game.
Yeah. So they had over 3,000 yards on the ground that year as well. It was like 3,017 or 3,077, something like that. So the last 2 years, and even though it counts quarterbacks and receivers, they've had over 3,000 yards rushing. Right. So yes, I think that we are going to be better in 2025 from the running back production than we were in 2024.
Yeah. So to me, are we better as a running back room than we were a year ago? I think a lot of people would look at that and go, no, absolutely not. You had a featured back that you knew what you were getting. You got an all-around back that was great, and you had another back that was a workhorse, dirty work type guy that would do it all. But to me, yes, I think we're better than we were a year ago, even though the lot of production isn't there on paper, right? Barbie's got some production. He's an 830-some yard rusher a year ago. He's got more than that, in his career. This is just last year. Matthysse has had some production. Granted, it was 2 or 3 years ago, but he's had some production. Then you got to rely on some guys that, one's coming off of injury. You got another guy who's got to prove it because he decided to opt out of the season and take a red shirt last year. So there's a lot up in the air. And, of course, the X factor is Del Rio Wilson or Zion Turner or Jaquai Long. Who's going to rise out of that room, and how effective will they be at running the football in this scheme? But I think overall the running back room is better because the potential for more explosive plays exist in this offense. The numbers say that. Wherever it's been, it's produced explosive plays and explosive statistics. So, contrary to what some folks might think, yeah, I think we're better than we were a year ago. That's just it. I got no other reasoning for it. You got anything else you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I think we've said it all on this one. This was a great episode. I, too, like you, I like to know your thought process about how you arrived at these picks. And I know that that's reciprocal, and you said that. But these are so much fun, and I feel like the fans when they comment as well, which we encourage all you guys to do so. When you comment to us about that, I want to hear why you're picking a certain person if you had to pick these same people too.
Yeah, we might as well be asking these questions to you guys too, right? It's just like you can't share the screen with us when we're recording. So you should absolutely be answering who's your biggest loss? Who are you most excited to see? Who do you think is going to be your breakout player this year? And who's your MVP? And who might be that sleeper pick for you? Along with, do you think we're better in 2025 than we were in 2024? And yeah, don't just give me a list. Tell me why. Explain to me your thought process of who you chose. Russ, that's all. The position group breakdown series will continue next week. We're not quite sure who we're going to talk about, but you can guarantee that you're going to get the best in-depth coverage that we can possibly give you at the ThunderCast, and save the $15 from buying a Lindy's or buying an Athlon because, man, they're not covering the herd like we're covering the herd. Russ, if you got nothing else, take us out of here.
Yeah, whether you see us at the cam, whether you see us at the vet, or whether you see us bringing you the best coverage of all in our position group breakdowns, no matter where you see us, we're going to be saying, go herd.
Go herd. It's the ThunderCast. Don't go anywhere because the position group breakdown series will continue. And if you've missed an episode, you've got time to go back. You can catch up on the coaches, on the offensive line, on the special teams, and the linebackers as you get done with the running backs. It's the ThunderCast. Later.